Hello there and good afternoon. This is L24 News Program and these are the headlines. British Prime Minister quits as tour leader but says he will continue to serve until the party chooses his successor. In the African continent, nearly 900 prisoners escaped in jailbreak in Nigeria's capital. The G20 meeting will be held in Bali July 7th with the theme of building a more peaceful and prosperous world. The local matter Wednesday announced the end of the most successful Mediterranean Games in history, with the testimony of participants from 26 countries. Hello again and welcome. I'm your host Abdurrahim Kashur and those were today's top stories. First, in our topical news, Wednesday announced the end of the most successful Mediterranean Games in the history of this tournament, with the testimony of participants from 26 countries. After 10 days of intense sporting competition, Miriam Zian tackled the story in this report.
After 10 days of competition in Iran, the closing ceremony of the 19th edition of the Mediterranean Games took place on Wednesday evening at the stadium of the Olympic complex Milud Hedfi. The closing ceremony of the Mediterranean demonstration was marked by the presence of the star of the Algerian song Cheb Mami and many others. The audience was pleased with a high-end show made of fireworks and pyrotechnics and an extraordinary dance show which portrayed the diversity and richness of the Algerian culture. Algeria has signed its historic participation in the 19th edition of the Mediterranean Games with the greatest numbers of medals among all its participations. Fourth on the podium, our athletes won 52 medals, including 20 gold, 17 silver and 16 bronze ones, surpassing the best figure with 32 medals won at the 2001 Mediterranean Games in Tunisia. The Med Game Commissioner thanked citizens and athletes for their contribution to the great success of the Games, and a Prime Minister who was also present in the big event did not miss the chance to express his pride and joy. Today, Algeria has proven its ability to build large structures and is ready to host large events, as proved the success of the 19th edition of the Mediterranean Games.
In Algeria, the Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune received Wednesday the President of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, Sahli Work who is on a state visit to Algeria, leading a large delegation after attending the official celebration of the 60th anniversary of Algeria's independence. Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune also received as well the Cuban Minister of Foreign Affairs, Bruno Rodriguez, who gave him a message from his Cuban counterpart, Miguel Diaz. Bruno Rodriguez, who is on a visit to Algeria, is as part of the festivities celebrating the 60th anniversary of the independence, said he is proud to share this occasion with the Algerian people. In the same line of thought, Algeria signed a 3-year contract with the French energy group ENGIE regarding the gas contracts via mid-gas pipeline. Through this agreement, both parties have agreed to consider the market conditions to review the gas contractual prices applicable over a period of 3 years up to 2024. With the signing of this agreement, the parties confirmed their intention to extend their partnership to LNG and natural gas. At the press conference with the President of the Republic of Ethiopia, Mrs. Sahli Works with the Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune announced that he had agreed with his Ethiopian counterpart to open as soon as possible a direct airline between Algeria and Addis Ababa. The Algerian president also emphasized that the meeting with his Ethiopian counterpart had made it possible to take stock of bilateral relations. UN Special Advisor to Libya, Stephanie Williams, said that the elections are the solution to Libya's legal crisis, strengthening in a media interview the need to draw up a roadmap to be held. Williams denied nominating anyone to represent the Libyans, saying the decision was exclusively up to the Libyan people. The UN official highlighted that the current time requires leaving aside political differences, while democratic solution to the Libyan crisis must be accelerated. Still in Africa, nearly 900 prisoners escaped in jailbreak in Abuja, Nigeria's capital city. Explosions and gunfire were heard in the night in Kuji area, where the attacks arrived and forced their way into the prison. Nigerian officials said that 443 of the 879 fugitives are still missing, while hundreds of others have either been recaptured or turned themselves in at a police station.
What happened yesterday night, it was around after 10. In my house, I had a sound of gun. But when within me, I said, this is not gun, this is more than gun, it was a bomb. But 2 times I had it clear, and also with gun. So in this morning today, I saw a helicopter. I said, this is bad omen.
Angolan head of state João Lourenço announced that a ceasefire was concluded on Wednesday at a summit between Rwandan President Paul Kagame and Congolese Felix, against the backdrop of growing tensions between Kigali and Kinshasa in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo.
I really hope and expect from this process that it will bring about the immediate ceasefire and the withdrawal of this group from the M23, obviously waiting for the process to start. The roadmap that will lead to a process of peace, stability and trust.
Always in Africa, Mali's government announced on Monday it set a 24-month-long transition period until the West African country goes back to the constitutional order and a democratically elected government. The decree, read on national television by government spokesperson Colonel Abdoulaye Maiga, said that the transition retroactively started from 26th of March 2022.
The 24 months starting from July was a proposal from the government of Burkina Faso. It has never been a dictate, as some have noted on the web. It was freely proposed by Burkina Faso to be in phase with the notion of acceptability that ECOWAS asked us, precisely in terms of transition deadlines and in terms of the content of the timetable that we had to propose.
Demonstrators mobilized for 7 days to demand the departure of military leader Abdel Fattah al-Burhan are gathering during a site in the center of the capital Khartoum. The Forces for Freedom and Change, the backbone of the civilian government, sacked in 25th October 21, called for maintaining popular pressure after denouncing General Burhan's proposal. The Iranian False News Agency and state television said Wednesday that the country's Parliamentary Revolutionary Guard has arrested several foreign diplomats, including Britain's second most senior envoy in Tehran, accusing them of spying. Iran's state TV ran footage claiming to show the foreigners collecting samples from ground while under drone surveillance. Following a string of resignation from his government, the British Prime Minister quits as Tory leader, but says he will continue to serve until the party chooses his successor. Hassan Burkan has more to tell.
One after another, there are more than 50 who decided to leave Downing Street, putting more and more pressure on a Prime Minister whose days in office will surely be less than the ones he had already spent inside this building. Boris Johnson has finally resigned as Conservative leader, however he intends to carry on as the head of the UK's government until the autumn.
The Parliamentary Conservative Party, that there should be a new leader of that party and therefore a new Prime Minister. and I've agreed with Sir Graham Brady, the chairman of our backbench MPs, that the process of choosing that new leader should begin now. And the timetable will be announced next week. And I've today appointed a cabinet to serve, as I will, until a new leader is in place.
During his time as Prime Minister, Boris Johnson has faced multiple storms, but this may be the last one, as calls for him to resign as Prime Minister are mounting day after day. Nadim Zahawi, only 24 hours after being appointed Chancellor in his government, has urged Boris Johnson to leave. In a letter sent this morning to Mr. Johnson, the new Chancellor said, "Prime Minister, you know in your heart what the right thing to do, and go now." Like allies, like opponents, Keir Starmer, the opposition leader, also called for the Prime Minister to stand down from office following his resignation as head of the Conservative Party.
His own party have finally concluded that he's unfit to be Prime Minister. They can't now inflict him on the country for the next few months. It's obvious he's unfit to be Prime Minister. That's been blindingly obvious for a very, very long time. And if they don't get rid of him, then Labour will step up in the national interest and bring a vote of no confidence, because we can't go on with this Prime Minister clinging on for months and months to come.
After a string of resignations from Downing Street, Number 10 announced Boris Johnson is appointing new cabinet members, including a third education secretary in only 3 days, a crisis rarely seen in the UK government.
The G20 foreign ministers meeting will be held in Bali from July 7th to the 8th in this year, with the theme of building a more peaceful, stable and prosperous world together. This meeting will serve as a strategic forum to discuss global recovery efforts. More in this report.
Foreign ministers from the Group of 20 leading rich and developing nations are gathering in Indonesia's resort island of Bali for talks bound to be dominated by the conflict in Ukraine, despite an agenda focused on global cooperation, food, and energy security.
Bali sudah
In Bali, we have enough police with good capability in dealing with this kind of event. We never underestimate any threats. We always overestimate and put into account every possible threat. So we are always ready for any international or national level events.
Ahead of the G20 foreign ministers meeting, Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong remarked that Russia's adventure in Ukraine was illegal, unjust, and immoral.
The implications and the impacts of Russia's illegal, unjust and immoral war on Ukraine. If you ever want an example of a nation which has demonstrated its willingness, its disregard for the need for food security for a world recovering from a pandemic, it is Russia.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is scheduled to meet with Wang, Beijing's top envoy, on Saturday. The meeting will be the latest high-level contact between U.S. and Chinese officials, as Washington has questioned China's stance with regard to Russia's Ukraine crisis. While in Bali, Lavrov also is due to hold meetings with his counterparts from other countries, including China, Mexico, South Africa, and Brazil, on the sidelines of the G20 foreign ministers. Members of the G20 account for about 80% of the world's economic output, 2/3 of the world's population, and about 3/4 of global trade.
To Russia-Ukraine file, civilians continue Wednesday to evacuate the burned-out cities of eastern Ukraine, mainly Slovyansk, the city which is the next objective of the Russian forces in their plan for a total domination of the Donbas region. Islam Sid on what's follow.
Officials in Ukraine said on Wednesday that Russian forces were targeting cities and villages in eastern Ukraine, with most civilian casualties occurring in the Donetsk province. The regional governor urged the area's residents to evacuate as Russia increases its military operations.
Now the situation is deteriorating as heavy shelling has begun in Slovyansk and other cities.
Russian shelling killed at least 8 people and injured 25 more. Meanwhile, pro-Russia separatists said other attacks by Ukrainian forces killed 4 civilians. Amid intensified fighting in eastern areas, Mykolaiv mayor said the southern port of Ukraine had been heavily hit by missiles and no safe places left. The mayor has also urged people to leave the area, as Russian forces advance to the strategic city of Sloviansk in Donetsk region, making it likely the next main battleground in the conflict.
We are fighting for our whole south, for the whole Ukrainian Donbass. There is currently the most brutal confrontation near Sloviansk and Bakhmut. We are fighting for the Kharkiv region.
On the other hand, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that the artillery delivered as part of the Western military aid to the besieged nation operates in a very powerful way.
Finally, it seems that Western artillery, the weapons we have received from our partners, have begun to operate in a very powerful way, and this significantly reduces the offensive potential of the Russian army.
The current progress by the Russian forces in the Donetsk came after storming through Luhansk. Both are part of eastern Ukraine's highly valuable industrial Donbass region, which Moscow seeks to control.
Lithuania showed off a crowdfunded Turkish made military drone which it planned to send to Ukraine. Vilnius raised 5.9 million euros for Bayraktar TB2 drone over 3 days last month, before its Turkish manufacturer announced it would donate to the drone free of charge. At a press conference, the Lithuanian Defense Ministry said that weapon will be sent to Ukraine immediately after being presented to the public. The Ukraine Restoration Conference was held in Lugano, Switzerland. The summit has been renamed the Ukraine Recovery Conference. This summit was the unique opportunity for Ukraine to share its recovery plan and engage with international allies to get and develop the best possible response to enormous challenges that Kiev is facing after more than 5 months of conflict. First suggestion is the summit was to fight corruption by the digitalization of architectural and construction fields. Then for the second step is to digitalizing the rest of measures as well as custom, according to Ukraine's Prime Minister.
Here in Lugano, we have taken an important step on the long road to Ukraine's recovery. This opens up prospects for the future. There is a palpable willingness among all partners for a joint long-term commitment in the interests of the people of Ukraine.
We should create conditions when corruption will be impossible. So first of all is digitalization. So we digitalized many spheres in our country. First of all, investment sphere, constructing and architectural sphere. It's absolutely developed and digitalized, and it's make corruption in this sphere impossible, and many investors approved this before the war. Next steps, now we are working on the digitalization of all other spheres, beginning from the custom.
European Union lawmakers voted Wednesday to include natural gas and nuclear in the blacklist of sustainable activities. The European Commission earlier this year made the controversial proposal as part of its plans for building a climate-friendly future, dividing member countries and drawing outcry from environmentalists as greenwashing. Human Rights is accusing Taliban forces of committing atrocities in eastern Afghanistan in operations targeting the ISIL supplanter group. The report says that the abuses were committed in the two eastern provinces of Kunar and Nangarhar. The organization accuses the Taliban of carrying out abduction and execution of alleged members of ISIL al-Shot. The report also said residents suffer abusive raids of homes. Thirdly, since the Taliban takeover last year, residents says that they found more than 100 bodies in canals and other locations. Authorities says that the man charged with killing 7 people at Independence Day parade confessed to the police that he unleashed a hail of bullets from a rooftop in suburban Chicago. They also says he then fled to the Madison, Wisconsin area where contemplate shooting up at the event there. Muslim worshippers performed the Tawaf, or circumambulation around the Kaaba, Islam's holiest shrine, on the first day of the annual Hajj pilgrimage, which each year brings together its largest number of pilgrims since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. And now for more international news, let's follow this report.
Taiwan is training in guerrilla warfare and workshop to prepare for what it sees as the very real threat of a Chinese invasion. China views the Taiwan as part of its territory and has pledged to take it one day.
After 10 months of fraught negotiations, finalized the draft of a new constitution, which will be put to referendum on September 4th, in which all Chileans aged 18 or older must vote.
Authorities in Uzbekistan say normal life has returned to the city of Nukus after the deadliest clashes in the Central Asian state for nearly 2 decades, blaming the violence on protesters. The government has said 18 people were killed last week, including 4 members of the law enforcement forces.
Italian authorities sought on Wednesday to locate and identify 12 people who died when a glacier collapsed in the Alps. The melting ice is being blamed on ever-rising temperatures.
And that's all we have for now so far. Let's have a reminder for our main top stories. British Prime Minister quits as Tory leader but says he will continue to serve until the party chooses his successor. In Africa, nearly 900 prisoners escaped in jailbreak in Nigeria's capital. The G20 meeting will be held in Bali July 7th with the theme of building a more peaceful and prosperous world. Wednesday announced the end of the most successful Mediterranean Games in history, with the testimony of participants from 26 countries. So before the occasion of Eid al-Adha, this might be my last news, so I may say Eid al-Adha Mubarak to you all, and bye-bye.